You want to talk about SmackDown for a minute? I've got my notes here. I guess, Brian, this was the SmackDown episode. November 1st was the date, is what I'm trying to say. The night before the Crown Jewel.
That's what you're trying to say?
They weren't in, where were they here? Were they in Butte, Montana? They weren't live on this episode, were they? Because they had to be in Saudi Arabia mere hours later. You can't do that, can you?
Well, you probably could, but they didn't, and it would have been ill-advised for them to try.
I think it takes two. I don't think it's physically possible. Where were they on Friday night, November 1st at SmackDown?
Well, again, they weren't there.
See, I keep asking you these questions. You ought to know these things. I watched the show, but I didn't take note of it. Did they say? Is this one of those things where they were hiding their location?
I am looking it up right now.
You got nothing. See, it's a cover-up.
It was from Brooklyn, New York.
Well, no wonder. No wonder nobody would want to know.
Oh, come on.
No, they were just there. They taped an extra episode, right?
Yes.
Which is why this thing was so lackluster.
It was a nothing show. Every time they go to Saudi Arabia, the show before it, unless they're live, it's terrible. Well, or at least not worth going out of your way to watch.
It was, now let's not, again, the hyperbole now doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do our reputation any good if we say it was terrible. It wasn't terrible because there wasn't anything wrong with it, because there was very little to it to begin with. So it's just kind of there. It was a bowl of oatmeal with no sugar.
A wafer minus vanilla.
A cracker without the peanut butter. The cracker's okay, but that's just a fucking cracker.
Crack without the pipe.
Well, no, because the crack could still be potent.
Oh, well, you're the crack expert. What do I know?
Well, now, hey, goddammit. Now, how did I get that kind of reputation? I'm just saying it's not a proper analogy. I'm an analogy expert. And you did not form a cogent simile.
I apologize.
All right, anything to keep from talking about SmackDown. So here came the refrigerator. The women's champion, Refrigerator Jax, one of the women's champions, and she's doing a live promo. So this is, if you close your eyes, you can hear Sable talking. Can you not? The monotonic, is that a word? Monotonic.
You're the simile expert. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know
not a simile.
I know. You don't know anything else except similes. That's the problem.
Fucking English. I don't know nothing about English. I just know similes, which is a word of French derivative. See, now you prove my point. So it's a monotone. It's expressionless. It reminds me of Big Mama in 1985 when she was hunting for the Boogie Woogie Man. I've looked in bars. I've looked in cars. And here you are.
Boogie Man feel low.
Not as low as she did when they fucking wouldn't air that interview on. They edited off the TBS show. I think it made syndication. But anyway, so she spoke, recited, and then here came Liv and Raquel and Dominic to respond, but they were interrupted by Tiffy Time. And she did a recitation. And basically this whole thing is revolving around that she could cash in on Fridge too, as well as she could cash in on Liv. And there's these women are just not getting along. They smile in your face, but all the time they want to take your place, Brian. They're backstabbers. And finally, Tiffy punched Liv, and Liv said, "Get a referee." And they went to break in dramatic fashion, at which point, when they came back, Brian, you will never guess what was going on. A match between Tiffy and Livy. And finally, Tiffy tried to hit Livy with the briefcase, but Liv rolled her up, and the referee counted while he was on top of the briefcase. Was not only in the ring, it was right where he had to count. He had to count around the briefcase under his nose in order to finish the match. 1, 2, 3. And then Liv hit Tiffy with the case and tried to hit the refrigerator, but the fridge blocked it and hit Raquel.
Rachel
Raquel
Rodriguez.
Raquel Rodriguez.
Rochelle.
That's right. It's a young woman's journey through Minsk.
From Milan to Minsk.
Well, she hit everybody, including Dominic, with the briefcase, then Bonsai dropped Liv. And you could just see Liv's various internal organs just all saying, fuck it, at the same time. And that was a big old section of the program, wasn't it?
A big old section of the program. I couldn't say it any better than that. And you're the expert.
So why add anything? So then they had a package on Triple H and Orton last week where Orton wants Owens, but Triple H don't want him to have Owens because Triple H is worried about Orton, is what he told Orton. And then they had a video with Owens in his car again. Is he just driving around in some type of manic frustration? But he was very low key this time.
It's the big thing in wrestling now. If you're a star, you need a car. You know, Moxley, Jungle Boy, Kevin Owens, get a different perspective of the car. Eventually, they're all going to just race and run into each other, and we'll see what happens.
He sent the video in because he wanted Randy Orton to hear it. But he had to be in his car. I don't know why. He could have done it in the comfort of his own. Does he have a study at home, a den where he can go and put on his smoking jacket and his slippers and enjoy his peep? But he doesn't want to fight Orton. He didn't know why Orton is making him fight him because he never wanted to hurt Orton, but now he's going to, and it's all Randy Orton's fault. So he's taking the opposite approach of Jimmy Garvin, where Jimmy Garvin would say, it's not my fault. Owens is saying, it's all your fault. I have a feeling we're going to hear more about this upcoming.
Well, it leads into the big match of the pay-per-view. I'm trying not to say anything about that. It's hard because I've seen that to not say anything about that.
Well, no, it's not hard not to say anything about it. But anyway, then we had to suffer through the Street Profits taking on Purely Dreary, where the girl with Street Profits, what's her name? Kayfabe? B-Fab. Well, she body slammed one of these heels.
No shit.
On the floor. Yeah. And she's bigger than them, too. And then we were half an hour in, so they gave us Naomi and Bailey against Indy and Candy. And then we were 52 minutes in. And finally, they played Roman Reigns' music. And I should mention, they did a package of the Usos reuniting. The brotherly love is back in full bloom. But now we get the Roman's on the way to the ring, and he's bringing Jimmy with him. And Jimmy cuts a promo. He loves Roman, but you got to listen to me. I need you to drop the beef with Jay, or squash. He said drop it, and they said squash it. They were chanting squash the beef. He said, I made up with my brother, and now it's time for you to make up with your cousin. And the fans are, squash the beef, squash the beef. You got to get a Smash Burger sponsorship in here somewhere. They're leaving money on the table. But anyway, Jimmy's whole fucking point was, if we're not together at Crown Jewel, we will fall. And Roman asked for the microphone. He doesn't ask for it. He holds his hand out. And suddenly, here comes Yeet. And it's Jay's music, and he makes the entrance through the arena. And the fans are waving, and the fans are yeeting, and the lights are flashing. And I got to be honest with you, the most perfect thing about this was they timed this where he was getting in the ring with all this going on right at 9 o'clock. I mean, they got it down to a science because they'd started this segment at 52 in, so 8 minutes till the hour. But they knew this was the part that was going to snag people. And then Jay cut the promo, and we've laughed about him being blown up by the time he does that entrance and then has to go in there and cut a promo. But I think he conserved a little bit. This was the best promo that he's done since he got the whole yeet thing going on. Because he laid it out for Roman. Hey, we got to get back at Solo, but we ain't fixed it yet between us, because I remember what you did to me physically and mentally and the way you disrespected me, and I still showed up because that's what family do, is what he said. And a lot of people don't think it be like it is, but it do. And it's family above all. And this go around, you're not going to tell me what to do because I'm your equal now. And that got a big pop from the people. And then Jay's like, side by side, let's run this thing like we used to, but if you disrespect me, I'm gone. Or you can act like my cousin, and I'll see you at Crown Jewel, and we can all do it together. I mean, what a babyface promo, right? And he laid the whole thing out, and Roman holds his hand out for the microphone. Then he gets it, and he's milking it. And now the people are chanting, OTC, OTC. And Roman looks at him, and he says, yeet. And the place blows, and they start chanting, yeet, yeet, yeet. And then hug it out, hug it out. Now this is like the goddamn Jerry Springer show. Instead of a studio audience, they got 5 or 10,000 fucking people doing this shit. It's amazing. And then the Usos stood there and put the one finger up. And then Roman stood in between them and he put his one finger up and they popped again. 15-minute segment. It was the best thing on the fucking show. And that's probably what the people came for, that they were most happy with. But now, so we set up, like we didn't think it was going to happen, but we set up that they're united against the other bloodline, but just these are the stars and this is what the people give a shit about.
And we'll talk about it more with the pay-per-view review, but in general, these are the segments that hit, for me, a lot more than the actual bloodline matches. I'm more into the drama and the acting in these segments than the actual matches when they transpire.
Or in the case of this one, expire. But we'll get there. But anyway, then they had a girls' four-way with the 4 girls in the corners. And it looked like middle school cheaters, cheaters, middle school cheaters, middle school cheerleaders having a fight in one of those bouncy house things.
What about cheaters?
Well, you know what? I've said before, they ought to inspect those cheerleaders at these games carefully. They may be passing these ball players goddamn foreign objects. And then they teased Orton and Cody again. Cody asked Orton. I can't get anybody's name right. Cody asked Orton to save a piece of Owens for him. And Orton said there ain't going to be left. Apparently, he's just going to eat him like a bowl of nanner pudding. But then Cody said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do then. And Orton looks at the belt hanging there and then looks back at Cody and says, you'll think of something. So they're still dramatically foreshadowing this. Do you think it's all a plot between Orton and Owens? They're going to beat each other up and fucking try to kill each other to lure Cody into a false sense of security?
Well, I think it would be more valuable if it was 2 separate things, but the other thing you have to think about is coming out of the pay-per-view, which we'll review later, with all the Bloodline stuff happening and the Bloodline featuring the most over baby faces like Roman and Jey Uso, what is Cody going to do to be able to keep pace? Like, what are the good programs for him right now? Is it just Owens? And then what? If you go right to Orton, is that too soon because of all of this? But I guess that's fun to try to see how they work that out. But
well, but you know,
Cody needs something, though.
The next big guy coming back for next year might want to win the world title one more time. Do you smell what I'm cooking?
I do.
John Cena.
Hey, listen, John Cena, the big program I think they could do that would be great, but it would absolutely turn Cody heel, whether he liked it or not, would be Cody and Punk. That would be really intriguing, but I think it would backfire completely on Cody's reactions.
I think Cena could cut well, but they don't want Cena to be a heel either, but they could figure out a way to make that interesting for the Royal Rumble, couldn't they?
And The Rock, too. Remember, The Rock and Cody have unfinished business, so you have these things, but
I'm
feels like Cody's starting to cool off, though.
Well, I'm starting to wonder whether The Rock is ever going to finish his business or not. Because then he shows up at Bad Blood and stands there, and then we don't see him again. He just happened to be passing through. But nevertheless, speaking of the people who are cooling off or heating up or whatever, that was the main event. Gunther and Kaiser. You know what? That should have been his name. Gunther Kaiser. But Gunther and Kaiser took on Cody and Orton in the main event, and this has been just long anticipated. This match would take place, and they started it and went 1 minute or less to the break, and they came back with like 7 minutes on the air. So, you know, boom, Cody gave Orton kind of a blah tag, and Orton made a comeback and hit Gunther with the DDT and tried to hit the RKO, but Gunther slipped it. So Orton tagged Cody back in, and Cody made a comeback on Kaiser and hit him with the cutter. And then Orton RKO'd Gunther, and then Cody crossroads Kaiser and beat him, boom, 1, 2, 3. So that was kind of quick. But then as they were celebrating, here came Owens, no longer in his car. Maybe that's why somebody send security to check the parking lot. That's apparently where he is whenever he's sending videos from his car. And he nailed Orton with a chair, and at the same time, Gunther popped up and got the sleeper on Cody, and Owens stood there and did nothing to prevent Gunther from choking out Cody, and security came in, tried to get Gunther off, and that was all she wrote, as Mama Cornette used to say, except, have you seen what they're starting to add at the end of the program?
Oh, since they went to the USA Network, the executive producers?
Yes.
Virgil Riley Runnels Jr., I believe it said?
No, you got to update it. Paul Levesque, or Levesque, as we in the industry term it, and Lee Fitting. So, I mean, this is not anything that we don't know, but have they ever had any kind of credits before?
They have for events they've done, because I remember they even had some goofy ones, like executive producer, Kayfabe.
Oh, yeah, back in like those HBO specials and things in the early 80s, stuff like that.
Well,
right?
Stuff like the Slammies.
And some of the Coliseum Video Slam. Though the Slammies, the production people at the studio got special permission to do some rib credits on the Slammies, too.
Do you think it's a smart thing, especially just in terms of separating yourselves from the previous administration? Letting people know this is a different, people who are just tuning in now, what's this at the end? That's not Vince McMahon's name there.
Well, then I wonder if they're going to do that.
Because what goes behind that choice of all of a sudden adding that? Not that he doesn't deserve credit, Triple H, but that's a Paul Heyman move, actually.
Well,
executive producer Paul Heyman.
Lee Fitting deserves a lot of credit for the way this thing looks now, too. I'm not saying they don't deserve credit. I'm saying it's a departure from what they've normally done, which is not have credits. And if they're going to have credits, why don't they go all the way? Because not only like your regional sports broadcast or your network sports broadcast or an entertainment show, they have directed by, audio, camera, whatever. Why don't they do the whole thing then? Is it because in the old days, wrestling didn't have credits per se because you didn't want to be Booker, although Dusty did with the TBS show, Virgil Runnels. Like that was a well-known secret. But there's no reason they really couldn't now. Don't put down agents for matches that tell the guys what finish to do. But for the technical crew, I wonder why they couldn't have some credits. Are you trying to keep these people from being credited?
I'm saying the only people getting credits are the two people of the three people in charge.
Well, funny how that works out, isn't it?
Nick Hahn said, keep my name off this.
Yeah.
I have a very robust name. Please keep it off this.
What about Ari? Ari should get some credit. Matter of fact, I knew he'd grow up to do good things one day.
He does. It's called a dividend, but yes.
But anyway, that pretty much was SmackDown. And I mentioned a name there, Brian, on the SmackDown show. And I understood maybe this could have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But did they fire a few people this week?
I don't know if I would term it as firing. Apparently they released...
They asked them, please go away from here and don't ever come back? Is that more...
Well, here are the names. Tegan Knox. Tegan Knox was released this past week.
Well, we haven't seen her in quite a while anyway, as far as I recall.
And if I recall right, I think in the times that we've seen her, she's had at least 2, if not 3 different knee injuries that took her out for almost a year.
Yep, I remember that may be the case as well.
Another name that was released, somewhat surprising, she was on the show you just talked about, Indy Hartwell.
Well, that's what I was going to... She was just here with her sorority sister, Candy. And apparently this was... she goes from being on fucking national TV one week to, we don't need you anymore.
Should AEW sign her? She a size? She's not one of the small girls. I believe she's a fan, so maybe, she got the heart in the right place for this.
Well, a lot of people have their heart in the right place in AEW. It's just their brain that's dislocated about 3 feet south.
Some have even had their brain removed, according to reports in The Observer, and then placed back in their head.
But that's, that was an experimental case, and we cannot blame, because we've had a lot of readers.
Yeah. Yes, we're reading this newsletter of ours, yes.
We've had a lot of listeners that have said to us, where can I go to have this brain procedure done? Because, I got some problems with my brain. And we have to tell them, no, it was an experimental procedure done only at the Narita airport in Japan.
It's in Japan. If you need to get the surgery done, apparently it's in Japan. Or at least that's what we've read.
But you got to go to gate 5 at Narita airport and knock 3 times, and they'll take you back to the place where they do that operation.
All right. Some of us would like to get back to that place, but let's, Jim.
All right. Who else did they Who else did they exile? Who else did they send out never to be heard from again? Out into the cold, cruel world.
The final name on this list, Baron Corbin.
Ah, Baron, we hardly knew ye.
12 years with WWE.
Jesus Christ. He must be a heck of a nice guy that they went to that much trouble and effort to keep him around for 12 fucking years.
It's always weird for me because I grew up in the era of WWF where it felt like everyone was there for a long time, but when you really look back on it, some of their runs were like 3 years, 2 years, and they were in and out. 12 years. And it's not like an abnormality. There are other people that are just there forever. No disrespect to him, I'm not saying fire Sheamus, but Sheamus has been there for fucking ever. You know what I mean? Like, there are guys that are just, they're on this show forever. Kofi Kingston, forever you've been seeing them on this show. And you never used to have that.
Baron Corbin, 12 years, that would be the equivalent of in 1996 at the start of the boom period, the Attitude Era, whatever, right beforehand. Who was on the roster in 1996 that had been there continuously since 1984? Besides a Brooklyn Brawler.
Howard Finkel. Tito was gone by that point. I don't know of anyone in 95. Brett started, I guess, technically maybe in 84.
Yeah. But again, was Brett continuous, or didn't he take a break in the mid-80s at some point? Nevertheless, it's ridiculous. And that's the byproduct of there only being one place to go. And, and let's face it, I don't think anybody's pushing that Baron Corbin was the in-ring equivalent of Bret Hart or any stars of that particular level. But it's guys. And that's we talked earlier in the program that we did about a developmental program where the idea was there was going to be different territories so you could rotate talent back and forth and they could get different experiences and you could keep things fresh on your cards. And how does this guy in any way get better when, they sent him back to NXT after he'd been there for 10 years, right? The fuck?
You think he's a prime candidate to get signed by Vince for his new company?
Well, only if he's, wanting to get into the entertainment industry. Because, of course, Vince said he's not going to be in wrestling. They're going to be producing major motion pictures and sitcoms, baby.
See, that's the catch when they asked his PR person, is this going to be a wrestling company? Of course they said no. Vince would never say yes to that. It won't be a wrestling company. Sounds like a Southern thing.
It's gonna be bodybuilding. And then as soon as we get Luger back under contract.
Well, there it is. Those are the releases. Baron Corbin, again, many, many years on the roster. A lot of different character changes. Some funny segments. Some really dreary segments.
Really not funny segments.
But all things considered, a nice run there. We'll see what happens to him. Obviously, they own the name Baron Corbin. And we'll see what happens to...
Obviously, would he want it?
Well, you got to reinvent yourself now. It's a little hard, I would think. 12 years.
Well, I think he needs to reinvent himself into a whole new profession instead of wrestling. But again, if you were an independent promoter, oh God, I could have Baron Corbin on my show for only $1,500 if he'd go that low, $2,000. What are the kids making these days when they come out of the WWE? How is that gonna fucking work? He needs to be somebody. Maybe he could call himself George Hackenschmidt Jr. I guess
he looked more like Joe Rogers.
That wouldn't be nice, would it?
No, I don't think that would be the right thing for him, but we'll see what happens.
That's not nice at all. But anyway, some of these people...
Hey, yeah.
Well, what were you going to say?
No, I had a separate thing, but finish what
you're separate thing? Well, I'll just say some of these people, they need to get out of the wrestling business and they need to come up with a new line of work and a new way to make money and a new way to separate the suckers from their cash.
I don't think we should look at it like that, no.
Well, sometimes you got to take a little crowbar and you got to pry people's hands out of their pockets with their money in it. And then they're happy with the product that you give them. See, just like our relationship with the listeners, Brian. The people may think, oh, fuck, I don't want to listen to any more of that Cornette. But when they sit down and they're forced to listen to us, then they get a kick out of it. So sometimes you gotta force yourself to do something for your own fucking good, right? You prove my point.
Right.
Well, in that case, some of these guys, like Baron Corbin, he ought to go to Shopify. That's what I'm trying to say.
And do what? What's he going to do?
And sell something.
What's he going to sell?
Anything besides turnbuckles and monkey flips. Because, folks, Shopify. What are you laughing about? Shopify, nobody does selling better for one thing than Shopify. Ricky Morton doesn't sell like Shopify does. They're the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. You can convert things from one thing to the other thing, and it'll cost you half price. Actually, if it boosts it, it means you'll get half again as much. And less carts will go abandoned. And then the grocery store parking lots won't be such a hazard to everybody's vehicle. But it's all about getting your business out to the consumer and getting your product to the consumer and then checking them out. And once you check them out and you've got their money, then you give them the thing and kick them out and send them on their way because you're on to the next customer. And you got to keep this moving. And Shopify is not afraid to be rude. Once they've got somebody's money and they've got their merchandise, then they're going to kick them right out of the store or your website.
No, first of all, that's not how it works. There is no store. We're talking about websites, and they're not going to kick anyone out of anywhere. They're going to work on your behalf to have a pleasurable experience with the customer, not a rude experience so they get kicked out of the store.
Well, they'll hang up on you if you take too long on the phone, too, because they're about making money. Can't have any of this fucking idle chit-chat going on.
They're about making you money. They're about making money for you, with you, with Shopify.
That's right. So these fucking customers, they're going to have to fork over and get the fuck out. But I'll tell you, folks, right now, you could upgrade your business. You can get the same checkout as all the big major players use. And you can find out how that Shopify can integrate and intify all of your business opportunities together so that you're getting the most out of the least. And they are the host with the most. So, on the web, in your store, in their feed, in your feelings, and everywhere in between, they're going to get your customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. And if they're trying to scroll while they stroll, even better, they're not paying attention and are more susceptible to being chloroformed and taken behind a building.
First of all, what? No, let's not.
Well, we've got to find out if they've got enough money that they can afford what we're trying to sell them.
We?
So we're just going to rifle their pockets a little bit.
Who's we?
We and Shopify.
I think it's you by yourself. Shopify has nothing to do with this nefarious activity. It's all you.
Shopify will be your partner in taking your business to the next level. And I tell you how you can make a deal. You can get a deal. You can save money. Brian, you want to know how?
Oh,
it's this easy. You can get a $1 a month trial period of Shopify. And all that Shopify provides and all they observe and all that they take in, you can have $1 a month trial period where you can get into the big money and the big bucks and the big business like that too. All you got to do is go to shopify.com/JCE, all lowercase, by the way. For whatever reason, that is very important because they've got all lowercase in capital letters. Shopify.com/JCE, all lowercase, $1 a month trial period, and you will be instantly admitted to the wonderland that is Shopify, and you'll retire rich, happy, successful landowners and farting through silk.
No guarantees. No guarantees, but you will have the opportunity with Shopify.
Well, that's what Vince used to give out, was just opportunity. But no, we're going to guarantee this is a sure thing. You're going to become a robber baron, and you'll own probably a dozen railroads and several oil wells with Shopify.
All right.
Every time that happens, not only does a dollar bill come out the side, but also an angel gets its wings. All righty then. What in the world is going on over at the Arcadian Vanguard Network this week before we go any further with the crown jewels?
Another fine week of programming on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Ooh, that was very nice there at the end. Get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Why am I smiling from ear to ear? I can't stop laughing already. Of course, if you want to get away from the hilarity and have serious wrestling talk with just the news.
If you want to be depressed and if you want to be morose.
If you want wrestling news with no opinion, no star ratings, just the actual news, just the facts.
No guff.
No guff.
No nonsense. No who shot John.
No guff, but get your stuff from the Wrestling News. Directly from thewrestlingnews.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. I'm cracking myself up today, ladies and gentlemen. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, look for the Wrestling News. Of course, Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam and Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, wherever you find your favorite podcast. And the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership! Go through the archive, 605pod.com, available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Wherever. It'll be found sooner or later, probably floating in the river.
The Mothership.